Hello from Praxis Recruitment. I'm Christina Stewart, and today I want to talk to employers about negotiating salary with job seekers. So there was a tweet that went viral recently. It was a recruiter, an internal in-house recruiter, who made a comment about hiring on a new employee at 45,000 less than what the job had started with. And this recruiter was indicating basically that it wasn't within her bandwidth to take the time, take the energy to teach someone how to negotiate. And although I agree on one side that it's not the recruiter's responsibility to teach someone how to negotiate, however, I will say that it is within the purview and the responsibility of the employer, and therefore the recruiter as an extension of the employer rather, to treat people fairly. So I think that the employer, the recruiter, whether that's an internal recruiter or whether that's an external recruitment firm like ours, it is absolutely essential to build trust with an employee through the recruitment process. And part of that building trust is negotiating with transparency and in all fairness. Now, I will say, when I am looking for a candidate, one of the first things I think about is this person sitting within the right range of compensation for this role? I am not looking to bring on somebody who's working in and around, say, 45 to 50,000 for a role that's going to pay 120. They're just not ready for that. But generally I can kind of get that from their resume in terms of what they're doing now and whether that's appropriate. And so because of that, because I'm sizing it up and making sure that I don't want to get too far down the road and have wasted someone's time if the role is not paying as high as what they need and want and deserve. Let's have that conversation fairly early. So my style and my suggestion is to get out in front of it. The easiest and the best place to actually put that is right in the job posting. So put it right in the posting. Where does this range, what is the range? Where does this job start? Now, I will caution, if you put a range in, say from 60,000 to 90,000, and then you end up getting down the road and offering someone 72,000, they might think, well, why? Why didn't I get 90? And so sometimes sharing the full range leaves people a little bit disenfranchised, but definitely at least a starting point, or definitely providing a midpoint that, the midpoint for this role is about $70,000 a year or whatever it is, actually can help and guide people into whether they want to apply for it or not. So I do think that there's a movement toward transparency in postings, and for good reason. Let's not waste anybody's time. I think that the reason that we've kind of kept it quiet and kept it hidden is because we didn't want to talk about wages. But if we want to create an equitable society, really, where people are getting paid for the contribution that they're making to an employer, then I think we need to start talking about what compensation we are providing for various roles. And so some of that will include going at it within the posting. Now, if you don't want to put it in the posting, you don't want to share, I understand. But that information needs to be conveyed pretty quickly after. So I would recommend that if an applicant comes in and you look at them and you think, well, they're probably pretty close, what you'll want to do is you want to send them a recruitment package of some kind fairly quickly that indicates what the compensation range is and to ascertain whether or not that's a good fit for them. And so what we'll do is we'll put together a full package, which includes the posting, the job description, the number of direct reports, the location, whether it's remote, all of the particulars, all of those details. And we also include in it compensation. Here's the range. And then we will send that along to applicants or candidates that we think might be viable to find out are we in the right ballpark. And so there's nothing wrong with being transparent from the employer side. I don't think as employers we need to sort of be holding our cards to our chest and saying, okay, well, you tell me how much you're going to make first. That's kind of an unnecessary form of negotiation. So I think actually providing a range, but then understanding also what does that range mean? So going back to that 60 to 90, if somebody's making 60,000, what does their experience and contribution look like? And if somebody's going to be offered in at 90, what's the difference? What is the experience, education, further industry, work history or whatnot that would put somebody at that 90? And so it's being really, really clear on what that looks like so that you can explain that to a candidate who you are making an offer to as to why. Also, it guides them in their future years. So yeah, I'm going to offer this role to you right now at 70 because this is the point where you're at. But here's how you move forward. You're going to further your education in this realm. You're going to take on these sorts of projects. And here's where I see you moving in the years to come. And so being really transparent about that. So if you're not going to put it in the posting, make sure that you're sharing it right away. Written form is great. But if it can't be written, then as soon as you get into that interview, you want to be having that conversation. Don't go through an hour and a half interview with someone just to find out at the end that they're making 50,000 more than what you can actually pay for this particular role. Have that conversation right out in front. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, hey, so tell me, I want to make sure that we're in the right ballpark. What are you hoping to be at in terms of compensation? Where are you looking? What is the value that you feel that you are providing? What do you want to be paid? And I think it's okay to sort of ask that question and ask that question fairly early on. And I also think it's okay, or it's understandable if the candidate is hesitant to answer that question right away and wants some further information from you, either on the role or asking for complete transparency in terms of, well, do you have a range? Do you have a budget for this position? And then being forthcoming with that information. I think that that's probably fair. Now, one thing I want to comment on, though, is that what we're trying to do as a society, I hope, is getting away with saying, and I used to do this all the time, I used to say, so tell me, what are you at and what do you want to be at? What are you currently making and what would you like to be making? And I don't ask anymore. I no longer ask, what are you making? Because what we know is that marginalized populations, including women, people of color, indigenous populations, and so forth, we know that they don't get paid as much from the outset of their career. And if we're asking them, what are you making now? What we're doing is we're dragging that anchor along with them throughout their entire career. So fresh slate, I want to know what you feel your value is in terms of this particular role. So I no longer ask, what are you at? I ask, what do you want to be at? So in a nutshell, put it in the posting if you can, create some kind of recruitment package and get it out there as soon as possible. Put it at the front of an interview, making sure that you are having the conversation about compensation. And also, don't be fussed if somebody doesn't want to share. I think that traditionally we've been in this place where employers are in a position of power and they don't share what the wage is, and we have to make sure that people are negotiating and people out there, job seekers, are asking. But I think that that is sort of antiquated, if you will, and I feel that as a society, what I want to see is I want to see more transparency and communication around compensation between employer and employee, but also throughout the world and seeing what other roles are paying. So I think we all need to be talking about how much jobs are worth and so forth, because I can't imagine, going back to that tweet, that candidate who just was hired onto a role who finds out at some point down the road that she left $45,000 on the table because the recruiter said that they didn't have the time or the energy to work with them to teach them how to negotiate. I just think that that's pretty much reprehensible, and it's unfair, and all you're doing is eliminating retention for that particular employee, which then of course leads to further recruitment. So it doesn't work. It absolutely doesn't work. We need transparency in terms of our negotiations, in terms of opening the door and being really honest about what the role pays. Okay? So let's make sure that we're putting it out there. Thank you so much for listening about my conversation here. Make sure that you are subscribing to our YouTube channel, and in the description here, I've also included a link to sign up to our newsletter so you don't miss any of the good stuff that we talk about at Praxis Recruitment. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again next time. Bye.